Hey y'all, it's Kim. So this is the deposition of Richard Kahn, who is the accountant for Jeffrey Epstein. Of course, he's claiming he doesn't really know much about what was going on as far as the potential sex trafficking or whatever you want to call it of the minors, or he claims that most of the women look to be in their 20s or 30s, that kind of stuff, all of the different assistants he had and all that stuff. But anyway, let's go ahead and let him speak for himself. Um, and of course, you'll know Pam Bondi's either being removed or fired. I don't know. I've heard two different things, but we'll just kind of see how it plays out. Because then there's a Truth Social with Trump praising her work, blah, blah, blah. But then somebody else said that she was fired because of the whole, she leaked information to, I guess, Eric Swalwell. So who knows at this point? We'll probably never get the end of anything, but I know she really screwed up on this Epstein stuff. So that's why I'm keeping going, even if it not very many people watch this stuff. It needs to get out there. But anyway, like I said, let's get going here. Oh, and Todd Blanche, I mean, I guess he's now going to be acting as the director for what the hell was she in? She wasn't FBI. What was she? DOJ. Sorry. I couldn't think. Anyway, let's play this. Okay. I guess they're still off the record. Okay. Just give it a second. It was off the record, and then sometimes my internet's slow, so you know, things happen.
We'll go back on the record. Mr. Kahn, and 1:02 p.m. Mr. Kahn, towards the end of the last hour, there were discussions about the estate settlement fund for victims and survivors of the crimes of Mr. Epstein, and it was mentioned that there were carve-outs for other individuals. Could you please inform us of who those individuals are that were carved out?
Yes, my recollection is that from the Epstein Victims Compensation Program, I'm aware of two carve-outs. There may have been a few more, but these are the two that I'm aware of. One was Alan Dershowitz.
For what?
And the other carve-out was Prince Andrew.
Huh?
Regarding the mediation, there were two additional carve-outs. One was Leon Black, and the other was Jess Staley.
And just for clarity, could you briefly explain what it means that these individuals were carved out?
Yes. So when I was alluding to the release from the estate's perspective, as fiduciaries, us wanting as broad a release as possible, because we did not want an individual that worked for Epstein or someone that may have been indemnified to later come back to us for legal fees. We wanted as much coverage as possible so that we could have finality. The victims that chose to carve out these individuals, I don't believe were meant to be covered, but maybe they were. I think that the individuals wanted there just to be 100% clarity that these individual names that were carved out were not part of the release.
Understood. Switching gears a little bit now, at HBRK, Harry Beller was a part of that entity, is that correct?
Yes.
And Mr. Beller, I believe you testified earlier, his role was that he handled a lot of the derivatives and investment accounts for Mr. Epstein, is that correct?
Yes.
And when did Mr. Beller leave HBRK?
I believe Mr. Harry Beller left employment in May of 2014.
And do you know why Mr. Beller left in May of 2014?
As I testified earlier, I believe, to the minority. Mr. Beller was predominantly involved in working on investments for Les Wexner, and in addition to Epstein. But at the time, from 2000, I don't recall the exact date when Mr. Wexner and Epstein terminated their relationship, but let's just say approximately 2008, the amount of transactions and volume that Mr. Beller was working on has slowed down. So at that point in time, Epstein was just working predominantly on, at that point in time, Mr. Beller was working just on Epstein stuff, and there was not a lot of work. And Epstein did not think that he was getting good value for paying Mr. Beller's compensation package, and decided that he was going to no longer pay for his services.
And you mentioned that the business relationship between Mr. Wexner and Mr. Epstein ended in the 2000s. You said you didn't know exactly when that was. Do you know why that relationship ended?
I do not know why it ended.
And whose decision was it for Mr. Beller to no longer be employed with HBRK?
It was Epstein's decision.
And was that decision to terminate Mr. Beller, is that decision made with you?
I was not part of the decision. I would have liked Harry Beller to stay employed and continue to work together. It was Epstein's sole decision.
And at that point, how did your role change after the departure of Mr. Beller?
Well, as I testified earlier, Mr. Beller was working on clients' investments and stocks and options, derivatives, and doing the accounting for it, as well as tracking Epstein's assets and investments. The accounting work that continued thereafter was not work that I took on. Another accountant for Epstein did that work. What I picked up from Mr. Harry Beller's work was I was involved with tracking Epstein's stocks and bonds and reporting to him on a monthly basis the value of those assets.
And who was the other accountant that picked up the lion's share of the other work?
A woman by the name of Jeannie Brennan, who worked out of the St. Thomas office.
Are you aware of how long Ms. Brennan worked for Mr. Epstein?
I don't recall how long she worked. I know that in 2005, when I began working for New York Strategy Group, she was already working for Epstein.
And was there any type of agreement when Mr. Beller left HBRK that governed his departure from the entity?
I believe he received a severance payment. Maybe he was on salary for a period of time. I don't recall the amounts or the details of that severance.
Was the entity, did you take sole ownership or management of the entity at that point?
At that point in time, I believe the year was 2014. When we filed our tax return for the 2014 tax year, I was the 100% owner of HBRK.
How did HBRK's business change with the departure of Mr. Beller?
I don't think it changed much because the majority of the work that Beller was focused on had already diminished over the years, with Mr. Wexner no longer being a client of Epstein's. So, as I said before, I picked up a portion of it, and Jeannie Brennan picked up a portion, but HBRK still continued to do accounting and bookkeeping services on behalf of Epstein and a number of his other entities.
And how well would you say that you know Mr. Beller?
At the time that we worked together, we had, both a personal and work relationship.
By personal relationship, what does that mean?
That we might see each other outside of work.
social events, thing of that nature?
I only recall one or two circumstances, but we were friendly, and we are both Jewish. So during certain Jewish holidays, we wish each other a Happy New Year, or speak along those lines. So I only remember one or two events outside of work, but we had a friendly relationship, more than just coworkers.
Do you still have a relationship with Mr. Beller?
Unfortunately, not.
You say unfortunately not. Why do you still not have a relationship with Mr. Beller?
Because when I took on the role of co-executor, and there were lawsuits that occurred, and I believe that Harry Beller was subpoenaed, and part of it just made it a little challenging for us to continue to communicate.
Reporting indicates that Mr. Beller made some large cash transactions over a series of months towards the end of his employment with Mr. Epstein. Are you aware of Mr. Beller's large cash transactions?
I'm aware that Mr. Beller had signatory authority for Epstein's accounts at JP Morgan and then Deutsche Bank. And I'm aware that Mr. Beller withdrew cash at times. I'm not familiar with any particular transactions.
Reporting indicates, based off legal documents in the 2022 U.S. Virgin Islands lawsuit against JP Morgan, that under the span of 18 months, there were checks cashed for approximately $800,000. Are you familiar with that figure for that occurring?
I'm not familiar with the figure, but could you repeat the time frame that it was reported, $800,000, please?
It was around the time of Mr. Beller's departure from HBRK, so I believe that would be 2014. These figures were found out as part of the 2022 U.S. Virgin Island lawsuit against JP Morgan, and the SARs that were unsealed as part of that case showed that in under 18 months, Mr. Beller had cash checks for approximately $800,000.
I'm not aware of any particular amounts, but I testify that that amount seems abnormal to me. I don't recall ever having $800,000 of cash over an 18-month period.
Between the years of 2013 and 2014, so towards the end of Mr. Beller's working arrangement at HBRK, he sent checks in the value of tens of thousands of dollars signed by himself to members of his family. Are you aware of who is?
I don't know.
Are you aware of who is?
It might be one of his children. I'm not sure.
Are you aware of who?
I believe that's Harry Beller's son.
Are you aware of who is?
I'm not aware.
Are you aware of who is?
I'm not aware.
Are you aware of who is?
I'm not aware.
Are you aware of any of the transactions made by Mr. Harry Beller to his family members between the years of 2013 and 2014?
I believe these transactions were made. I'm not familiar with the specifics. The only way I would have seen these transactions would have been on the gift tax reporting. But sitting here today, I don't recall what we reported in 2000. You said 2013?
2013 to 2014.
I don't recall the specifics of those gift tax reports, but if I would have seen those checks, they would have been coded to gifts, and we would have recorded them if they were over the annual gift tax amount.
Would you have approved these checks?
No, I was not in position to approve any checks.
Do you have any understanding of why Mr. Beller may have sent checks to individuals within his family from Epstein-related entity accounts?
I don't have any understanding of why Mr. Beller would have sent those checks. However, I can say that in all my dealings with Harry Beller, he was an honest and straightforward person. So my presumption would be that he had Epstein's approval to send those checks and that did not do it in a fraudulent or improper fashion.
As the personal accountant to Mr. Epstein, were you aware of the frequent cash withdrawals made by Epstein-related entities?
I'm aware that when Harry Beller was a signatory, he withdrew cash. I don't recall the frequency. And when Harry Beller was no longer working, that Darren Endike withdrew cash.
And sorry, just to be clear, you said Darren Endike would withdraw cash?
When Harry Beller was no longer working for Epstein, Darren Endike, I believe, other than Epstein, was the only signatory on his accounts. So Darren Endike would withdraw cash from Epstein's accounts.
And were these cash withdrawals, were they reflected in your accounting records?
Yes, every withdrawal would be recorded in Epstein's books and records.
And how would those be categorized?
When the money would come out of cash, it would go from cash to petty cash. That would be the journal entry for the books and records.
Who would instruct, whether it be yourself or another member of HBRK, who would instruct someone to facilitate providing cash to another individual?
From the accountant's perspective, we tracked the cash. So when the cash came, it was put in a safe, and we were recorded on Epstein's books and records. As far as dispersing cash, it would the approvals would come from Epstein. For example, if a property manager wanted or needed $2,000 or $3,000 cash to pay tips, to buy groceries, to pay for dry cleaning, they would come to the office and they would sign out a slip that said 2,000 petty cash. We would then set up a sub account for that individual. Let's just say in this example, it was Richard Barnett, 2,000 petty cash. He now is accountable for that $2,000 petty cash. And if he ever wanted to receive another dollar of petty cash, he needed to bring back receipts for how he spent that money. Now, he might come back to us after spending $1,600 with a $400 balance and say, can I have another 1,000 or 2,000 in petty cash? And provided that he had receipts, he would then receive more petty cash.
And at any given time, how much cash was kept in the safe at HBRK?
I did not handle the petty cash, so I don't recall the amounts, but I'd say somewhere in the range of $20,000 or $30,000.
Would you also provide cash for Mr. Epstein to keep in his New York townhome?
Epstein would request cash, and for a period of time, when I met with Epstein, I believe I testified earlier that we used to have meetings at Epstein's townhouse, and it was usually a group of us that would attend, and then as individuals were no longer working for Epstein, for example, Emad Hanna or Harry Beller, the group got smaller. So for a period of time, I was asked when we would come from HBRK office to bring Epstein cash, and he was given the cash, but I don't know if Epstein, used the money and spent it. We typically, I would see him every 3 weeks. So I don't know if that was spending money for 3 weeks or if he put it in his safe. I don't know what he did with the cash.
Is there a certain increment of cash that you would often supply Mr. Epstein with when you would meet with him at these 3-week intervals?
The amounts that I recall from the last few years of working for Epstein was typically $6,000 that I would bring him approximately every 3 weeks.
Is there a reason or rationale for the $6,000 figure?
That was what was either requested and communicated to me from Epstein directly or from Leslie Groff.
Would you personally provide that cash over to Mr. Epstein?
If I were visiting him, I would bring it. If Epstein were in town and I were not seeing him because I didn't have a need to see him or I was on vacation, maybe his driver Jojo or his house manager would pick it up or one of his assistants. But I saw Epstein on a fairly regular basis, so the cash would be withdrawn from the safe from Bella Klein. She would then give it to me, and when I met with Epstein, I would give it to him.
Did you ever provide any cash to any woman or girl during your time working for Mr. Epstein?
I was not involved in petty cash, and I could probably count on the number of times on one hand that I would open the safe. I didn't want to be involved with, I didn't know the combination by heart, so I had it written down. I didn't want to be bothered with opening the safe, but probably in my 14 or 15 years, one or two handfuls of times, I needed to go into the safe for one reason or another. I don't recall if I was giving the cash to property managers or to women or to pilots or to Epstein, but I can tell you that I did go in the safe about 5 or 10 times over my 14 years.
Did you ever witness Ms. Klein providing cash to young women or girls?
Many individuals would come, as I said, property managers, pilots, assistants. On occasion, I did see Ms. Klein provides cash to these individuals I just mentioned, but I never saw Ms. Klein give cash to a minor.
Did any of the women or girls Ms. Klein provided cash to surprise you at all?
Most of the women that came for cash were typically Epstein's assistants. So I was somewhat familiar with them from, sending them payroll records to fill out, W-4, and their documentation for health insurance if their entity provided. So I knew most of the assistants that came into the room that requested petty cash.
And which assistants? Can you provide their names for us, please?
I could provide names of assistants, but I can't, from my recollection, recall a particular instance where I saw a woman come in. I have no specific memory of an instance where someone came in, but I can recite assistants' names, but I can't tie that to them coming and withdrawing petty cash. I also would like to say that there was, when I was talking about when we worked together, Bella Klein and I, the first 4.5 years we were in a large office together. The four of us had individual desks, and I was at one end and she was at the other. So I might not always see if someone came in. For the 2 years that we were together at 301 East 66th Street, we did share an office. So it was likely I could see people coming in there. But thereafter, from I believe May 2012 until Epstein's incarceration, we did not share an office.
Do you know why Mr. Epstein needed access to so much petty cash?
Well, Epstein used petty cash for many reasons.
The massages.
First, as I alluded to earlier, the property managers requested petty cash for expenses relating to the home. But the petty cash needs that I recall were magnified after JP Morgan dropped Epstein as a client because JP Morgan supplied credit cards, I believe Master and Visa cards for Epstein. And the only other card that Epstein had at the time was American Express. And for a lot of vendors back in 2013 and 14, they didn't always accept American Express. So it was difficult for us to obtain new credit cards. So cash was used more than when we had credit cards, from my understanding. But the property managers used it for expenses relating to the house, whether it was groceries. At one point in time, I know we had a chef that withdrew a lot of cash to buy food that was prepared. The assistants used it for shopping errands, as well as for buying stuff on behalf of Epstein. Our office used petty cash, or if someone was going out and buying office supplies or meals, and the pilots used it predominantly for travel and for tipping.
And you mentioned that it was difficult for Mr. Epstein to obtain new credit cards. Why was that?
It was after JP Morgan dropped him. I believe he had a difficult time obtaining credit cards due to his prior conviction, or pleading, I'm sorry, of soliciting a minor for prostitution.
Are you aware that there was a pattern of withdrawals of cash for exactly $9,800?
I was not aware of the amounts or the cadence of withdrawals. I was not involved in the process.
You didn't review any type of statements that would show withdrawals and withdrawal amounts?
The QuickBooks file had every transaction recorded, so it was in the QuickBooks file, but it was just not an area that I worked on. With Epstein's personal QuickBooks file, the 2 or 3 things that I was focused on was picking up any income or deductions that would relate to his personal tax return, and picking up his gifts that would need to be reported on separate gift tax returns.
Isn't it possible that some of the cash used by Mr. Epstein was for some sort of deductible reason?
Deductible? No. The petty cash, again, the assistants, if they went to a store and bought him a sweater, that's not deductible. If they bought groceries for his home, that's not deductible. If the pilots were traveling, none of his aviation was ever, we never took business expenses on any of his aircraft, so that was not deductible. HBRK's office expense, that could be a potentially deductible expense at our level, but not for Epstein. It was all related to personal items, so I don't believe that anything relating to petty cash was deductible or relatable to his personal tax return.
Would he not use petty cash as a way of providing a gift to someone?
Oh, thank you. That's a good point. Yes, if he gave cash to someone, thank you for the clarification. If he gave cash to someone and we didn't know what it was for, he may give cash to someone and say rent. If he was paying that individual's rent, it would go in the gift tax reporting. If he gave petty cash to an individual and said reimbursement for a sweater you bought for Epstein, that would go on Epstein's personal stuff. But thank you for the correction. Yes, if a gift was given in cash, it would go on his gift tax reporting.
So, because any gifts provided by Mr. Epstein in the form of cash or cash compensation, you would need to know what the use for that cash was ultimately, correct?
No, if we had proper coding, again, if it was for a woman's rent, if it was for buying a sweater for a woman, if it was meals, if he was paying for taxis or for transportation, we had an explanation. And if it didn't relate to Epstein, it got reported in the gifts. But if Epstein gave a woman or a man a gift, and it said, $3,000 cash, and we did not receive an explanation, we took the conservative approach and put it in his gift tax reporting because we did not get backup for what it was for.
Going back to the $9,800 number, are you aware of who would have made the decision to withdraw that amount of cash from an account?
I was not, as I said before, I was not a signatory, and I was not involved in the withdrawal of cash from the banks.
Right, but that doesn't mean that you wouldn't have any idea of who was making that decision.
I would make that decision. No.
Did you know anyone who did, or do you know who did?
I don't know who made the decision.
You never asked?
No,
No.
I wasn't involved in the cash withdrawal process, so it didn't, cross my realm of work. I wasn't involved, and I didn't know, why an amount was taken out of 9,800. I mean, it's not an amount that sounds familiar to me. I remember there were $7,500 withdrawals, but I don't recall $9,800 withdrawals. And no, I was not involved in the process.
Could you list out for us the individuals that were signatories or could decide on withdrawing cash from accounts?
The signatories, do you want to refer to a specific time period or just generally speaking?
I think generally speaking, across all of your years of employment with Mr. Epstein.
So the signatories were as follows: Epstein, Maxwell, Harry Beller, Darren Endyke, and I believe that was it. There were other signatories, for example, I believe on some of the aviation checking accounts, some of the pilots had signatories already, and I believe on some of the households, for example, in New Mexico, I believe we had what we would call local accounts, and in Florida as well, where some of the property managers would be able to write checks up to a certain amount so they did have check writing authority.
Could Bella Klein withdraw cash?
No.
Are you aware of what the reporting threshold is for cash withdrawals?
10,000.
No. The only thing I do know is when a large amount is taken out, you need to sign paperwork, but I don't know what that amount is.
$10,000.
You're not aware of a $10,000 figure being an amount that sends flags and reports to the Department of the Treasury?
No,
Yep.
I'm not aware.
I used to work in a
You
bank.
think it's
That's what it
suspicious that
is.
$9,800 was consistently withdrawn out of accounts related to Mr. Epstein?
I can't make judgment. I wasn't involved in the process, nor do I work for the Treasury Department. So that's something for them to decide, but I don't have judgment on that.
I understand, but I mean, you're an accountant. You've been an accountant for, some 20 odd years now. I think it would be strange to not know what the reporting limit was, and if consistent figures pulled under that reporting limit didn't raise any flags for you personally.
I think he said that he wasn't aware of that because that wasn't his realm of responsibility. So I don't, if you want to ask him, were you aware that 98 was taken out once, twice, or however many times, that may be a useful question, because I think you can answer that.
Were you aware of any banks raising suspicions to you about the amount of cash withdrawals that Mr. Epstein's accounts were faced with?
No, I do recall that there were transactions that both JP Morgan and Deutsche Bank asked about certain transactions, but I never recall hearing anything from the banks regarding cash withdrawals.
And what transactions would those be?
I believe that Deutsche Bank, I don't recall the specific transactions, but I know one or two times they would send an email and say, could you please give us a description for what the following wires or payments relate to?
And would you always provide a description?
Yes, when I would receive an email like that, the first thing I would do is look to the general ledger and see if I knew what it related to. I know one of the times, I believe Deutsche Bank asked, it was a Spanish name, and they said, what does this transaction relate to? And when I looked at the books and records, I found out that related to a payment for work on Epstein's barge down in the U.S. Virgin Islands. So if I found out that information, I would note it and then send it along to Epstein and say, here's 4 transactions. I know the first one relates to a barge. Can you please explain what these other transactions relate to? And he would provide me with backup for what those transactions related to.
Did you ever think any of the explanations for those transactions were suspicious in any way?
No, a typical, typically he would say, I know a couple that come to mind. He said it was for school, or it was a loan, or to a friend, but nothing deemed or seemed suspicious to me. No.
Looking back with your knowledge as you sit here today, do any of these payments or withdrawals concern or raise flags for you now?
Yes, 100%. Looking back with what I know today as co-executor, I should have never trusted Epstein on anything he said. So I regret many decisions I made, and having trust in his explanations to me, knowing what I know now, and all the terrible things he did to so many innocent women.
And girls.
Switching gears a little bit here. What was your compensation for your role with Mr. Epstein in 2010?
I don't recall a particular year of compensation. I was paid by New York Strategy Group, and then I was paid by HBRK. And my W-2 was approximately $180,000 to $250,000 during
Good Lord.
the years I worked for Epstein.
Years you worked for, so your base salary was the same from 2010 until 2019?
No, my base salary maybe went up $10,000 or $15,000 a year, along with the bonus, potentially. Yes.
And how much typically would your bonus be?
Might be somewhere from $10,000 to $20,000.
Jeez.
I was going to say, as I mentioned to you, I started in 2005. And I might have started at 180,000. I think I testified, and I believe that was the right amount. But within 2 years, my salary went down 10%. So then it started going up from that amount that it went down to.
Understood. And outside of your base salary and your bonuses, did you receive any other forms of compensation or remuneration from Mr. Epstein?
My entity, HBRK, paid health insurance, and I believe Epstein one time paid a medical bill for me on my behalf, as well as at times I received tuition assistance.
For your children.
For my children, thank you.
That's my next question.
Thank you.
In 2019, what was your total compensation?
2019 was the 1 year that my W-2 was not in that range of $180,000 to $250,000. In 2019, Epstein had prepaid for services for the entire year, and HBRK was a C corporation. So with a C corporation, any income at the end of the year is taxed at 35%. So at the end of that year, we had a large amount of income, and based on advice from my accountant, I said, what's the best way to handle this? Should we have the corporation pay the tax? And then if we want to take it out, we'll be taxed again as a W-2. And he said the best and most tax efficient way is for you to take that additional earned money in your W-2. So in 2019, I think my W-2 is approximately $600,000 and change.
Good grief.
And in 2019, were there any other forms of compensation?
Not that I'm aware of.
Did you receive any gifts from Mr. Epstein on a yearly basis?
I never received a gift from Epstein.
Did you receive any loans from Mr. Epstein?
Yes, I received loans from Epstein over the years that I worked for him.
Just one loan, multiple loans?
Probably 3 or 4.
What was the purpose for those loans?
Epstein treated these loans for me and probably 10 other employees as retention bonuses. He was giving loans to us similar to the way that a brokerage firm would sign on and bring an individual in. They would give a loan to a new employee. But these loans were typically 9-year loans, and each year annual interest was paid on the loans. And the loans had 2 outcomes. The 2 outcomes were one, either Epstein would forgive the loan and we would have to pick up forgiveness of debt income, or 2, Epstein would ask for the loan to be repaid.
And what was the interest rate you received on these loans from Mr. Epstein?
The loans, I believe at the time, were the midterm AFR rates.
And you mentioned there were 3 or 4 of them.
Yes.
What years primarily were these loans in?
Somewhere in the, I want to say 2014-15 range to maybe 2019.
And what was the total amount of those 3 to 4 loans, grand total?
Approximately $3 million.
And how many of those loans were forgiven by Mr. Epstein?
While Epstein was alive, none of the loans were forgiven. The loans were being, the loans had interest being paid each year, and none of the loans had ballooned or matured while Epstein was alive. When Epstein died, and the estate attorneys reviewed his trusts and his will, his estate, I'm sorry, his trust.
Just don't say what the attorney said.
Okay,
Just,
so,
you can say, if they have questions about it, you can explain
thank you.
things, but you don't explain.
The trust had forgiveness of debt provisions in it.
So how much total debt was forgiven for you?
I don't know technically when the debt is forgiven. I believe we still carry the loans on the books and records. I believe that it will be forgiven from a technical perspective when the estate is finally out of probate. And at that point in time, the estate's closed and then the trust is the operative document. So I don't believe anything at this point has been forgiven. But I believe that if a loan was forgiven while someone was alive, there would be forgiveness of debt income. And if it's part of a trust document, there is not forgiveness of debt income.
And so to be clear, you are still paying off those loans.
When Epstein died, I was continuing to pay interest on those loans. And that's when advice of counsel said,
Don't say what it said. It stopped.
it stopped, thank you. Payment stopped, and based on what the trust provisions had in it.
So when the estate is finalized and through probate and the trust is final, how much do you stand to gain from those loans?
I don't think I'm going to gain anything. I think the loans just will not be repaid. And I believe I said that the loans were approximately $3 million.
So how much debt do you currently have to the estate?
I think it's approximately $3 million. Yes.
Did you receive any compensation from any financial investments from Mr. Epstein?
When you say financial investments, I'm not sure what you mean, but I don't. Did I receive? I don't know how I would receive it.
Do you invest with Epstein?
I never invested with Epstein. I never invested with him. There was one deal that he invested in that I also invested in, which was a debt deal where an entity was buying debt, I want to say for 2 or 3 cents on the dollar, and they were trying to sell it for 15 to 17 cents over a 5 to 7 year period. But I personally wrote out an investment. I personally used my own money to invest in that. He didn't make that investment on my behalf.
Did you ever receive any ownership stake in any Epstein related company or entity?
Not that I'm aware of. Yeah.
Notwithstanding the final trust of Mr. Epstein, I believe it's called the 1953 trust. Mr. Epstein had a number of other trusts, is that correct?
Yes.
And did you receive any disbursements of money from any of those trusts?
Yes.
And how much?
I believe it was a few $1 million.
Few million as in 3 million, 5 million?
I don't recall the exact amount.
And how many different trusts did you receive disbursements from?
Just one trust.
What trust is that?
It's the 2013 Butterfly Trust.
This was in addition to your salary?
That was a distribution that was, yes, in addition to my salary.
Do you want to give the timing? That was after Epstein's death, was it not?
It may have been, I don't recall.
Are you aware of the other beneficiaries to the 2013 Butterfly Trust?
No, I am not.
And what was the money for as part of that trust, or what was the rationale for that trust?
What was, just so I understand the question, you're asking what was the purpose of why I received this distribution, or what was the purpose of why the trust had money?
I guess it's two questions. First one being, why did the trust have money? And then the second question would be, why did you receive the disbursement?
I believe that the 2013 Butterfly Trust was a pour-over trust, that Epstein made an investment maybe through a grant or through another trust, and this was some of the proceeds from the sale of that investment. And the second part of your question is, I was a beneficiary of that trust. I was never told why I was a beneficiary, but I was, one of many beneficiaries of that trust.
Did you ever use the funds provided to you from the 2013 Butterfly Trust to pay off any victims or survivors of Mr. Epstein's crimes?
No.
Were you a trustee or administrator on any other trusts, not including the 2013 Butterfly Trust or the 1953 Trust?
I just want to clarify, I received a distribution from the 2013 Butterfly Trust, but at one point in time, I believe when that trust was created, I was a trustee. So my role changed from being a trustee to later being one of the beneficiaries.
When were you a trustee of the Butterfly
I
Trust?
believe when it was originated, which based on the name of the trust was probably 2013.
When did you officially become a beneficiary?
I don't know. I believe the second part of your question was, I a trustee on any other trust? I was a trustee for a period of years for the Butterfly Trust.
What year was that?
I believe that I was a trustee for that trust from 2011 to either 2014 or 15. I don't recall the specific dates.
What was the purpose of that butterfly trust?
I believe that too was a pour-over trust from an investment that Epstein made, and it had proceeds from the profits of that original investment.
Did you become a beneficiary of that trust?
I don't recall, but I do know that I never received a distribution from that trust, but I don't recall if I was a beneficiary of that trust as well. I do know when I was a trustee, you can't be a beneficiary. So maybe I was a beneficiary, but I don't recall.
Are you aware of any other beneficiaries of that butterfly trust?
Currently speaking, or previously?
We'll say pre-2019 at this point.
Yes, I do believe I know some names of individuals.
Who are those individuals?
I think was a beneficiary. I think Sarah Kellen was a beneficiary. I think Marina Shuliak was a beneficiary. I think Sue Hamlin was a beneficiary. I think a woman by the name of, I don't recall her last name, was a beneficiary. Epstein's pilots may have been, but I can't say with certainty. That's all I recall.
Are you aware of how much money these individuals received in disbursements from this trust?
I don't know any particular amounts. I don't recall any particular amount, but I believe that over the course of the lifetime of that trust, I believe there was about $1 million in disbursements.
And just to be clear, were you a trustee or administrator of any other trusts already mentioned previously?
Not that I recall. Epstein had other trusts. Many of them were unfunded. Some of his trusts owned title to some of his properties, but those are the two trusts that come to mind.
And you mentioned that approximately $1 million in disbursements were made from the Butterfly Trust. Are you aware of the total amount of funds that were held by that trust? Is it greater than the $1 million that was dispersed?
No, I believe that that trust has dispersed 100% of the assets and has since been dissolved.
Just minor point, but I think it's distribution as opposed to disbursement.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'm not a trust and estate attorney, unfortunately. What is the COUQ Foundation?
The COQU Foundation was one of the foundations that Epstein formed. I don't know what the letters stand for. And that foundation was in existence prior to my beginning employment.
And what did you understand the role of that foundation to be?
I don't believe I was an officer or director. Maybe I was at the end. I don't recall. But I don't know what its administrative purpose was, but I know that it gave away disbursements to 501c3 charities.
You know, which 501c3 charities?
many charities. I don't recall.
Can you approximate the amount of money it dispersed to those charities?
I don't know. I do recall seeing a tax return in the earlier years that the trust had, over $10 million, but it was before my time, so I can't speak to specifics. But at one point in time, I believe it had $10 million in assets.
Did you replace Ghislaine Maxwell as treasurer of the COUQ Foundation in 2007?
It's possible. I don't recall.
Understanding you can't recall the specifics as we sit here right now, do you know why you would have replaced Miss Maxwell?
I don't know.
You mentioned previously during this hour that knowing what you know now as co-executor of the estate, with reviewing documents that you should have never trusted Mr. Epstein, what exactly have you learned to make you feel that way or believe that?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, I took the role as co-executor for three main reasons. One, I thought I was best suited to know Epstein's assets. Second, as we were going to be forced to liquidate his properties and terminate employees, I thought that I could do that in a proper and kind fashion. Many employees that I've had friendships with over the years. And third, and most important, why I took the role is I thought that I would be able to, as co-executor, create a program that would compensate women for all the harms they endured by Mr. Epstein. With that in mind, I first thing I did even before I was co-executor was listen to a podcast by Ken Feinberg regarding alternative dispute resolution programs. And after listening to that podcast, I was convinced that setting up a compensation program for all the women that had been harmed would be the best way for them to receive compensation in a discreet, kind, and non-confrontational manner. So with that in mind, I took on the role. But as part of the role as co-executor, I was forced for the first time to read all of the lawsuits and allegations of what Epstein did to so many women. So I learned of all the harms that he caused, and at that point in time, I thought I was able to act and help compensate these women.
Notwithstanding reading lawsuits or complaints or any other variations thereof, is there anything else that you have learned that informs your decision that you should have never trusted Jeffrey Epstein?
Well, going back to when I originally spoke to Epstein, when he first was charged with soliciting a minor for prostitution, he told me that this was a mistake and it would never happen again, that he would be with a minor. I never saw minors around Epstein, so I was never suspicious that Epstein was with minors. But in reading these lawsuits, I realized that Epstein abused hundreds of women. And at that point in time, if he was abusing hundreds of women, I couldn't trust anything he said to me, because he told me at that point in time that he was never going to do this again. So if I knew now what I knew, I'm going to rephrase that. If I knew back then that Epstein was not keeping his word and not honest and abusing women, I would have left work and reported them to the authorities.
And sitting here today, is it your belief that Jeffrey Epstein's financial and estate planning strategy was a purposeful design to obfuscate his crimes?
Do I believe that the work that Epstein provided for clients obfuscated his crimes? Is that what you're
Well, not just the work he provided for clients, but how he designed his entire enterprise, for lack of a better word, with dozens and dozens of companies and accounts. Do you think that was a design to obfuscate his crimes?
I think there's a general misconception about Epstein's operating financial entities and setting up LLCs and bank accounts. I believe that setting up LLCs and bank accounts are the ABCs of financial planning for wealthy individuals like Epstein and others. If I was, for example, a real estate developer and I purchased 5 buildings, I would never put 5 buildings in one LLC for the sole reason that if someone was walking down the street and they tripped and fell in front of one building, they would sue the building. As an owner of a property, I would never want to put at risk those 4 other buildings I owned for that one lawsuit. So segregating significant assets, to me, is common practice for individuals like Epstein and any other wealthy individuals.
And one last question or so before we finish our hour up. Did your co-executor, Mr. Endyke, was he part of the decision of planning the victim fund of the Epstein estate?
Yes, we worked together on that, and I brought the idea to Endyke after listening to that podcast, and then I knew a friend who knew Ken Feinberg's son, so I got his number and we reached out to Mr. Feinberg together. So yes, Mr. Endyke was part of putting together the Epstein Victim Compensation Program.
Was he supportive of this idea?
100%.
That will end our hour there and go off the record.
All right, I'm gonna stop it here. Hold on. Did it stop? Nope. All right. Anyway, so he obviously doesn't know what a CTR is, which is a currency transaction report. So anything over $10,000, they do send that off to the Treasury. Sometimes if you do, like, say, the $9,800, they'll do what's called a suspicious activity report. And I don't know if you're familiar with what they were talking about with Hunter Biden and his banking relationship with like Chase Bank and all that stuff. But anyway, they did suspicious activity reports on him. I think it was like either 100 something or 200 something of those. But anyway, for an accountant, he's not very smart, because you want to make sure that you're at least maybe telling your client, hey, you might want to be careful. I'm not saying that they should tell the exact amount, because otherwise you're aiding and abetting them in doing it. But yeah, it's just one of those things that he should probably know that, know the amounts for reporting. But yeah, anyway, I will talk to y'all later. Y'all have a good weekend if I don't see you. Bye.